Today is another day that I've kind of been sleep deprived. Same as when I reviewed Van Wilder. I only got about 3 hours of sleep last night and I've been awake for 16 going on 17 hours, so I'm gonna try to do my best to stay on my feet. But I've been doing better than last time. Been drinking a lot of this. And yes, I'm reviewing another movie on VHS that primarily can only be found on this format. I know as this is probably going to be the third episode that's gone up since I've started putting these videos back up, where I've talked about one of these. But this particular VHS tape and the movie, it's very special to me in some way because about 5 or 6 years ago, can't exactly remember, but it's around that time, this was the second tape I ever bought when I started collecting movies you could only get on VHS. And the movie is Firebird, 2015 AD. I decided to talk about this because the title, 2015, and it's 2015, so I figured better get to this before the year ends. And despite the fact that, it takes place in 2015, made in the 80s, that doesn't... I'm not sure if anybody is thinking this, but maybe a few are. Does that mean I'm going to talk about Back to the Future Part 2 at some point? Maybe. But if I do, it'll probably be as a mini review with the other Back to the Futures instead of a full-length review. Just because I have other movies this year that I really want to talk about on the Bisexual Movie Buff, and the Back to the Future trilogy just isn't one of those... isn't something that I feel like I want to talk about, at least to that degree. But I might. It is 2015, and a lot of movies in the 80s had their idea of where we'd be at this point, and none of them got it right at all. Blade Runner predicted that by 2019 there'd be flying cars, so did Back to the Future for this year. There'd be synthetic humans, and a bunch of other fucking bullshit technology. But hey, this one is not nearly out of proportion. It's more low budget and very cheaply made, and before I go into any more stuff that isn't directly related to the movie, let me tell you the plot. Oil shortages are so severe in the 21st century that automobiles are banned and driving is a capital crime. But Red and Indy can't forget the thrill of being behind a wheel. They hide their cars in the desert and drive them secretly, much to the frustration of the DVC, an international police force who repeatedly tries to catch them. When the DVC kidnaps Indy's beautiful daughter in an attempt to lure the two renegades, the breathtaking action and awesome driving skills accelerate into a spectacular showdown on wheels. I'm gonna get into this in a little bit, but first I want to talk about how I found out about this movie. And like I said, you can really only get it on VHS, and actually, I'm not even sure you can get it anymore. I doubt there's many copies left available on eBay or Amazon. I got this on Amazon, and there was a DVD release of this about 2 years ago, I think. But yeah, it's one of those cheaply made DVDs, like You're the Hunter from the Future. but it's kind of gone out of print. Pity. I love movies that are very unknown. But how did I find it? I found it through this DVD. It was a DVD I found at Borders. If anyone, I think there's still a few Borders around, but the one where I live went out of business, and it was like my go-to store for movies that wasn't a used store. And it looked interesting. Like, I love finding out about cheesy, bad movies and movies that are really unknown. Because usually the movies that are considered the worst, they actually end up being better than you think. Or at the very least, very fucking enjoyable. And I found a lot of very enjoyable films through this DVD. And the 50 worst movies ever made, it itself is not that good of a... It's labeled a documentary, but I'm not really sure it's even that. This itself is a very cheap DVD. How cheap is it? Well, you can pause the DVD menu. So what does that tell you? But nonetheless, I found a lot of very interesting movies through this. Some that I think are very good, and some that, yeah, I do think are really bad, just flat out shit. It introduced me to the Bill Cosby 1987 comedy Leonard Part 6. I wrote a review of that a few years ago in high school, and if I had to give one sentence opinion on it, it would be, it's a piece of shit. Even before the whole thing with Cosby started. Ugh. But yeah, and Firebird 2015 AD was on here, and it was somewhere in the middle, and I don't want to steal someone else's opinion, but this film gives a very good summary of it, and this DVD itself has kind of gone out of print, so if you can find a copy, like, it's not that great or well made, but it does introduce you to these pretty funny looking movies. But I will say a little bit what it said. It described it as a movie shot entirely in the desert, where it's free. Yeah, like, apparently you can, yeah, shooting in the desert, you don't need permission. And I have a former tutor who worked with me for many years in high school, who loves the Cannonball Run movies. I love the Cannonball Run movies. Anyone who knows those films? Burt Reynolds, Dom DeLuise, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr. And those movies, which are about driving in a race across the country, they are almost entirely take place in the desert. And for my tutor, although he loves the movies, he said that kind of killed it for him. Didn't for me, but anyway, yeah, this film takes place entirely in the desert, and it's a very cheap movie, as I said. I'm not even sure it had $1 million budget. There's little information I can find on Firebird 2015. So, yeah, I don't have an exact idea of what the budget is. But yes, it's very low budget, and one more thing about this tape that means a lot to me. Just need to show you this. There are little white spots on this, apparently. It was a rental based on some of the old stickers I found on it and some writing on this label. But yeah, this particular movie holds a little, I guess, nostalgia. So yeah, the plot where gasoline has been outlawed in the future, apparently back in the 80s in this movie's universe. The world, or the US apparently, has run short on oil, gasoline, just all kinds of fuel. And as a result, no one is allowed to use cars anymore. and owning a car apparently is just enough to get you arrested, and driving it, they establish that's really a big one. Some have called this movie a ripoff of Mad Max without actually seeing Firebird, just from my plot description. And I don't think so. Mad Max was in a post-apocalyptic world after a nuclear war, apparently. This movie just describes it as a world where they ran short on gas. I guess, as far as being a cheaply made bad movie, I really, really do like this movie. Sure, it's dumb, and I'll get into that, and it hardly makes any bit of fucking sense, but nonetheless, it's a fun, enjoyable, experience, like, watching Roadhouse. I will bring up some of the things that I guess don't make sense. This law that the movie has where gasoline cars driving is outlawed. This is just so impossible. Like, there's no way a law like that would ever be passed. Like, even if they ran out of fuel, and there would be rioting, there would be anarchy in a sense. And even in the movie, the main character, Red, says that we were ready to riot in the streets. So it's one of those films where it feels like it's trying to be political. Like, the whole film tries to be political, tries to have a message, tries to be a movie that's fighting for something. But in the end, it's like, this movie really doesn't have anything to fight for, and what it's trying to say just isn't relatable to anything in real life, so in a sense it's almost pointless. But the film makes up for having so many enjoyable moments and scenes and dialogue. And the main character, Red, I guess he's the main character. The movie's kind of all over the place as far as its plot. Because, yes, the main premise is you got these people driving through the desert in cars just for the fun of racing. And there's this police force called the DVC, which stands for Department of Vehicle Control, who are out to stop them, arrest them, and the people who drive for fun because they refuse to give up racing and driving are called burners. And this leads to probably the most well-known scene in this movie for those who love the cult films. People who don't like cult films probably won't know it, but Red says, when called a burner by someone who's a stickler to the law, it's better than being a burner. Red's like, burner! That's right, I am a burner! I burn illegal fuels. And it just sounds like he's saying it like he says it with the manipulating tone of a politician doing an ad. And for those who might want to know, Red, this geezer on the cover, is played by Darren McGavin. Who is Darren McGavin? I think a lot of you will know him from this movie, A Christmas Story, where he plays the dad, aka the old man. And it's a good thing A Christmas Story came along, because I'm not sure he would have been remembered for much else. Well, he did do a lot of other movies, but Christmas Story is what we remember him for, really. And I guess Adam Sandler's Billy Madison, where he was once again the dad. And as Red, Darren McGavin, he does a okay job. Like, he has energy, he's that kind of character that will give monologues and boast on what they're fighting for, and he'll have that attitude of, it is the right answer and nothing else anybody comes up with it is not my opinion, is wrong. That kind of thing. Yeah. But he does a good job, and he's pretty funny. He's likable, and he has that way of being kind of a wise ass, a bit of a dick, but at the same time being very enjoyable. Kind of like he was in A Christmas Story. There is this weird thing that he does throughout the film, and some other characters do this. It's like when the Burners do a race after they've made a few bets, like they bet gasoline whenever they race, and before starting their engines, they look at each other, and Red's the first one to do this. They do what I think the filmmakers thought would be the futuristic version of the finger. They do this. They just give the pinky. I'm not I'm not sure what exactly that, I guess that is. It's like meant to be the 2015 version of the finger. And when I first saw this years ago, I was like, what the hell was that? And a brief point to what I said earlier. Apparently, in the early 80s, there was a scare or fear, I guess, that there was going to be a shortage of fuel in the future. And I don't know, I mean, this film, it handles the subject matter really badly, and it's pretty silly with it. So, but I doubt even back then they would have what this film is saying, that we ran so low we had to cut fuel to we had to outlaw vehicles altogether. I doubt that even back then they would have thought this is what it would lead to. Maybe they did, but I wasn't alive back in the early 80s. Fuck, my mom was not even 10 years old when this movie came out, so yeah. But yeah, making it a law that you can't drive cars anymore. Bullshit. That's all I can say. Fucking bullshit. There's no way that kind of law would ever be passed. And the second main character in this film, who is not mentioned on the back of the box, is Cam, who we find out is Red's son, who he's been estranged from for many years, played by a guy named Robert Wisden. Wisden. I don't know. I think that's how you pronounce it, Wisden. And his son Cam, he has not seen his father for many years. Apparently his mother, Red's ex, she was against him being a burner, and she didn't want her son getting mixed up. And he's that one who speaks disfavorably of him being a burner. And Cam's a really odd character, and the actor playing him does a pretty bad job. Like, he does a good he does a few simple line reading scenes well, but for the most part, in the scenes where he has to really emote and show energy, he just is really all over the place as far as being over the top, as far as having wide emotions. And the guy, he has this weird accent that I can't really figure out. A lot of people say he's British, but I'm not sure. I think he could be British, or he's playing the character like he would as a stoner, or he's playing him as the stereotype gay of the time. I really can't tell. And the Cam character, when he first meets his father in the beginning, the dad takes him to his underground hideout where he keeps his car, the car of the title, the Firebird, which is apparently Red's nickname, and he's a real wanted outlaw, and the Firebird is considered the most wanted driver in the whole fucking country. And I will admit it's a pretty cool car, the one they use. It just, I guess, for lack of a better term, rad. And it's kind of funny to see a old man like McGavin was like in his 50s when he did Firebird 2015 AD. So it's kind of cool and funny to see an old man driving this. And yeah, back before I get off track too much, the character Cam, when he first sees his father in the underground hideout, he is very pissed, saying, "It's against the law. You're breaking the law. Law, 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 law. You shouldn't do this. It's against the law. You can get life for this." Real whiny, annoying, blah blah bitch boy. And Red takes him for a ride, and going with one ride is enough to convince Cam to abandon everything he's been taught to believe by his unseen mother. And that's when we're introduced to the other characters in the film. The character Indy, who's apparently Red's best friend, and also his partner in the whole illegal cars and gasoline business. And Indy, who's supposed to be older than Red, but in reality he was only 10 years older than Darren McGavin, the actor George Tuliatos. Look it up on IMDb. I'm not, like I said, it's pretty clear by now, I'm not good at pronouncing names that don't sound the way they're spelled. And Indy, he's like a funny, I guess the term would be old coot. Yeah, he's a geezer, but he's a bigger geezer than Red. And Indy's a funny character. He's primarily just a funny old man. That's all there really is to him as a character. But he has the same, like, we must get our freedom back to get the right to drive as long and as wild as we want. Oh, there is a scene where they talk about, like, Cam and Red talk about the fuel shortage, and Red brings up a very good point for a world where gasoline and oil have run short. Now, if I wanted to, I can make fuel out of bullshit. That's a good point, really. Yes, for those who don't know, you can make fuel to make machines run from methane, which comes, from shit. Either cow, pig, or certain other animals. And then the son's like, "It'd still be illegal." That accent, it's hard. You have to see this movie to really understand the accent that this fucking dweeb does. And just really, it's either loopy, British, or gay. I just don't really get it. And this film does have some pretty kick-ass explosions in it, as I hope you can see on the back here. And for as many bad movies as I've seen, and trust me, I've seen a lot of fucking bad movies, I always feel a movie can gain a few points if it features a real explosion, like a real car that was blown up in a big fireball. That always wins me over. But continuing with the cast, the fourth main character is named Jill, played by Mary Beth Rubins, and she's supposed to be Indy's beautiful daughter, as the back of the box says. And Jill, this character, the Jill character, oh. You saw me and my cousin Nick talk about our issues with the women in Yore. I mean, okay, Firebird 2015 AD is nowhere near as sexist as Yore the Hunter from the Future, but the main female character in this movie, wow. Okay, not wow, just Jesus. Okay, I'm ready. The character Jill, she's Indy's daughter, and she's fully behind her dad and what Red are doing. And when she lays eyes on Cam, she immediately has a crush on him. And basically, throughout the most of the film, like next to Red trying to introduce his son to the world of being a burner and road racing in the desert, Jill does the same thing. She teaches him how to drive cars and whatnot. And essentially, yeah, Jill and Cam are. It's built up that they're going to be a couple. And Jill, as she teaches Cam, and they never say this, but the basic way to describe Cam is he's a car virgin, and he's never been in a car or driven a car really, and while teaching him how to drive it, she tells him how to grab the stick, and she says, grab it. Oh, no, 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 but gently, and hold it and slide it in slowly. The character Jill, her whole dialogue, almost all of her dialogue is some kind of sexual innuendo or some kind of bitchy whine. The character Cam, he's a big dope, and he keeps messing up when trying to learn how to drive, and Jill, fed up with him at times, will either slap him or she'll be like, "You jerk," says it with a real bitchy tone. And with all the shit she does, like, she, next to all the sexual innuendos, she pats him on the butt a few times, and she touches him, and she tricks him into touching her at one point. So, and even though he is attracted to her, my thought is, bitch, you have committed at least 50 sexual harassments within your first 10 minutes of screen time. You don't have the right to call anybody a jerk, so shut the fuck up. And despite all that bullshit, Cam and Jill do... I don't want to say they are cute, but they are fun to watch. They're funny, if not anything else. And there is this scene where they have a love song, a lovey montage with a original song. And that part of the film's actually pretty well done. It's kind of nice. Just in the middle of a bunch of other silly shit. And probably the silliest moment with Cam and Jill next to all the on the line sexual harassment flirting is when Jill has Cam take the wheel and she's on the back of the car. They're using a buggy, kind of. It's more of a buggy, and she's on the back of the buggy and he hits the gas too hard and Jill falls off on her ass good, and it just goes into full slapsticky mode, and they even play Charlie Chaplin-esque music. I'm not complaining, it is funny, just, wow, is this movie all over the place, and it's like Stephen King when he directed Maximum Overdrive. Get the feeling the writers and directors of this, Barry Pearson, Maurice Hurley, and Biff McGuire, they wrote it, and the director David M. Robertson, you get the feeling they didn't really know what the fuck to do, so they just went all over the place where they wanted to cram as much fucking shit in, and it just became a unfocused mess, and there is not much information about this movie available, but at least with Maximum Overdrive, Stephen King had the excuse that he was coked out of his mind throughout the shoot. And I guess there's anything more to say about the character Jill, other than the fact that she is a big pile of sexual harassment lawsuits waiting to happen. I don't care if she's a hot woman, which she is, the actress is. Yeah, and it's kind of comedic, but still, I don't care if it's a woman. Sexual harassment is not okay. Why am I bringing this up? It was just a feeling when I was rewatching the movie. I was sexually harassed by some girls in high school. So, I mean, I'm not taking the film that seriously. It's just the opinion. Movies will do this with certain sexual subjects. They think it's because it's a woman doing it, it's automatically okay. And not all. It's hardly ever think it's really okay. I'm sorry. I got really serious there for a moment, but that was my opinion on this character. You have to see the movie to get it. But despite this, Cam and Jill, I think they are fun to watch. They're a very dysfunctional couple, but they are fun to watch most of the time. And Mary Beth Rubens, she is pretty sexy, and most of her screen time she wears a jumpsuit, like almost like a. And I don't know, just something about this particular woman in this jumpsuit that I think is very hot. And it's a pretty dirty jumpsuit, but she made it work. And Cam in his jumpsuit, he's pretty sexy too. Oh, and like with as another example of how PG ratings were different back then. There's a scene where Cam and Jill fuck, and we don't see it, but they undress first, and they both turn around, and she takes her shirt off, and Cam said he would, but he didn't. So when they turn around, he gets a peek at her first. And maybe it's the full screen, but when she swings around, her boobs are just bouncing and we see her nipples, and yeah, PG, 1981. That's how it rolled back then. So yeah, that's really all I gotta say about the good guys in this movie. Now I'm ready to move on to the villains. The main villain in this film is named McVane. He runs the DVC. The opening theme song of this movie is actually about the Burners fighting the DVC. And it's a pretty... I don't know how to describe this song. Like, it's not rock and roll, and it's not jazzy or soothing or mellow. I don't know what to call the opening song of this movie, but it's just like, this firebird's gonna ride again. This firebird's gonna ride again. DVC, DVC. I don't get it. But the main villain is named McVane, and he's played by Doug McClure. Who is Doug McClure? He's an actor who made mainly low-budget B-movies that are now cult films. And he was actually the main star of one of my favorite cult films that I usually put on around Halloween. It's always good to watch around Halloween. Humanoids from the Deep, from 1980. Those who have seen my Roger Corman filmography episode might remember it, and I briefly held it up in my James Horner tribute, if anyone's seen that. because James Horner did the score. And Doug McClure, he did a very good job in Humanoids from the Deep. But in Firebird, okay. I think a big problem with this is the characters really aren't that interesting. How so? Well, the villains, well, next to the plot being all over the place, and to be honest, by the end of this movie, never really felt like the film really went anywhere. It just happened and went by, but it is fun, just it feels like the story never went anywhere. The events in the film are pretty fun and just enjoyably bad and awesome. But as far as real story and characters, that's where the film falls flat. And yes, you're thinking, aren't those what make a movie a movie? Well, let me explain. The villains, the DVC, also include, next to McVane, a woman named Shayna, played by an actress named Barbara Williams, who was in that movie White House Down, and Saunders, played by Lee Broker, Chance, played by Frank Pellegrino, and this guy named... And this is actually like the number 2 villain. This character named Dolan, played by Alex Diakon. Fuck it. You know how I am with these names. And the character Dolan, he and this guy McVane, they have a personal vendetta apparently against the Burners, and it's never really established why exactly they hold such a personal grudge against them. This is where the movie just is really unfocused. Like, apparently Dolan, who's an Indian, like, there's, like, the DVC wear also jumpsuits. Not as sexy as the Burners jumpsuits. But the DVC, they go out and their job is essentially to arrest any Burners they find, but these guys are fucking psychotic. They kill the Burners, they take pleasure and they do it, and McVane allows the Burners to be killed and makes up excuses because apparently Dolan was... And I don't get this part. Dolan was they talk about the other characters, particularly the Shayna character. They talk about Dolan having been beat up and tortured, having his back ripped up by some thugs. And they never verify, like, are they suggesting it's the characters they're going after? Because Red doesn't strike me as a character that would do that shit. He just wants to drive his car. He's not a torturer. And Dolan... This guy, Alex Diakon, he doesn't give a good job. But it's not his fault, really. These villains are poorly written. Dolan doesn't really have much going for him other than the fact that he's vengeful and he's sick. He is a rapist. Oh yeah. This film has a scene that one of the few well done scenes in this is where the character Dolan tries to rape a woman, and it is really disturbing. Once again, 1980s PG rating. What the fuck? And he tries to rape her, and I'm not going to give anything away, but I really hated this character, and if anything good came from it, this character, the way they handled it, I did hate him, but establishment, backstory for the villains, there is virtually none, and they're very one-dimensional. The side villains don't have much going for them other than the fact that they are assholes, and even they try to rape. And they do it like the mutant fat monkey man from SS Hell Camp, known in other regions as Horrifying Experiments of the SS Last Days, I think. The Cinema Snob did a review of it several years ago. But yeah, I did hate the Dolan character, and when I hear that he got tortured and he has a scar, he actually takes off his jumpsuit at certain points, and he puts on what I guess is Indian war paint. And I don't know a lot about Indian culture or the history of it or the whole war paint thing, but I'm not sure the directors did either. This war paint looks more like playtime in kindergarten. It's just goopy color. It's like the McDonald's sign colored, and he just looks ridiculous. And I've seen pictures of real Native Americans with real war paint, and I can take that seriously. This character, the way he puts himself up, huh? And as for that scar on his back, you know what? He is such a sick perv in this. Give me a whip and I'll go antebellum south on his ass. And Doug McClure, I guess if anything else to say about him, he just plays a real douchebag in the sense, like, he's confronted by the female villain Shayna, about Dolan being essentially, insane. And McVane, she asked McVane, why do you let him get away with it? And he goes, because he's insane. And then McVane just lets out a evil laugh that makes him look insane, and I don't get it. And I guess the last character I really have to talk about is Shayna, played by Barbara Williams. And once again, the character is not well written, and she doesn't really have much to go with other than the fact that she's with this team of killers, these brutal police officers. And all she pretty much does is throughout the film is talk about how, even though it's her job and they have to abide by the laws, she is against the killings. She's like, how much more do we have to do? Why does it have to be like this? They write her as the real emotional whiner, and once again, I do like this movie. I am serious. I really love watching this. I have fun doing it, but yeah, like but when it comes to areas of like motivation and exposition, it just makes no sense, and it almost feels like it didn't have a reason to exist other than to give us fun enjoyment, which it does. And I guess that's all I really gotta say on the characters. And with that, there's only a few more things I want to talk about. One particular scene that struck me as dumb, that really struck me as dumb, next to all the other shit, was the character Shayna. She's taking a shower, and the DVC of their base set up in the middle of the desert. Oh, a good point this DVD brought up, the 50 worst movies ever made, and I don't like you going from another opinion, but I have to mention this. In this future, as this DVD says, gas-burning vehicles have been outlawed, except for the gas-burning vehicles that hunt them down. Yeah, like the DVC, they get around on motorcycles. So, next to this plot and its cause not making any fucking sense, You got hypocrisy in there. But back to what I was saying, Shayna, she's taking a shower and they have like limited resource, I guess, in their base in the desert. In fact, their base looks like a bunch of hot dog vending trucks. And she's taking a shower, and I guess it's one of those showers where you have limited water. And I don't get it, because I told you earlier about how the character Jill, we see her tits, and apparently they could get away with that. Like, it was a 5-second shot. But when the character Shayna is showering, she's showering with her pants and her shirt on. And that was just the level of dumb where I just couldn't get it. I couldn't understand it. Couldn't go with the flow, and I could go with the flow, I guess, with this pretty easily. But yeah, she showers with her clothes on, and I don't get that. Was it to avoid an R rating? Because you already showed the other girl's tits earlier, so you could have done this scene without showing her naked anyway. You could have done it from a distance. I mean, why did you have to show us that she was wearing clothes? I mean, I just don't get that part. I notice this is... I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm sitting like this. Usually I sit like this. I don't know, maybe it's the heat. It's pretty hot. And it's also after midnight that I'm doing this, so yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much my whole opinion on Firebird 2015 AD. A film that gave a very out of proportioned idea of what the future would be like. So, what's the verdict? It's dumb, makes no sense, and it's a film that tries to fight for a cause that really doesn't exist. But nonetheless, I love it, and the action scenes, although clumsy and not well shot at times, are pretty enjoyable, and there's some kick-ass explosions, and a few pretty hot scenes, and some enjoyment of seeing certain characters suffer. Oh, and we got a guy lighting a cigarette from a red-hot poker from a campfire, which is just fun to watch. So if I had to give it a rating, I'd give it just because I enjoyed it so much, I'm gonna give it 6.1 out of 10. It's probably better than what I'm giving it, but I don't care. I just love watching this cheesy, fun action flick. And I'm glad our future is nothing like this. This film has a great theme song that once again goes with the message that really has no reason to, that really is quite pointless, but it's an awesome theme song. You have to go watch the movie if you can find a copy to hear it, but it basically has this guy singing, "We're riding for our freedom. This carburetor ain't burned out yet, this Firebird will never let us down." I may have gotten some of that wrong, but since when do you ever get the lyrics to a song fully right? If anyone remembers me trying to sing the Greatest American Hero theme back in my Brad Jones filmography part 2 video. So that's all I'm going to say about Firebird 2015 AD. It is bad, but enjoyably bad. I do love it, and this tape holds a lot of emotional value to me. It's the second tape I ever bought, and it's always going to have a place on my shelf. And once again, this is another movie that I enjoy so much more than The Dark Knight.